Well, good morning. It feels so great to be amongst friends. Thank you all for coming. I did start out feeling a little nervous, but just looking at everyone here, I feel A-okay. So thank you so much. So yes, Rosemary Ugboajah, I run a brand development firm called NACA Creative, and we build inclusive brands. In addition to that, I founded, at the end of last year, a social enterprise called Out West, which is designed to provide free art education to youth in West Africa. I also serve on the board of Art Buddies. All right. Art Buddies is an organization that pairs mentors with children in underprivileged communities so that these children can discover the wonder of creativity. I know in here today we have potential mentors. So do check us out, check the website. There are a number. How many people here are with Art Buddies? All right. So please do reach out and connect. So what is inclusion really? I should start here. So here we're trying to talk about inclusion. How do you increase your inclusivity quotient? You are all here because you value inclusion, right? So now what? What do we do about that? What does inclusion mean? What does it mean to you? I'll tell you what it means to me, and I know a lot of you had filled out on your label what inclusion means to you. For me, inclusion is being invited to a party, but going beyond that. It's being asked to dance while you're at that party. But even beyond that, it's wanting to dance. It's feeling safe enough to actually dance. It's a stark difference between diversity and inclusion. That's what inclusion means to me. The seeds for wanting to build an inclusive world started many, many years ago. I was born in England, and my family moved when I was young to Nigeria, where I went to secondary school, high school. After secondary school, I moved back to London to pursue my post-secondary education. There, I got diplomas in fine arts and graphic design. Wanting to do a little bit more, I enrolled at the University of Minnesota to study advertising. I have studied on 3 continents. So by default, I have always been an other everywhere I've gone. While at the U of M, I enrolled, and the admissions officer at the U, after going through my enrollment, gestured to me to, hey, you should go to the African American department over there and register. I'm not American, I said. You just processed me as an international student. He repeated, no, you know, and he looked puzzled. Go to the African American building and register. I'm British. I'm paying international fees. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had absolutely no idea that African American was the polite term for being black. See, I knew I was British. If you call me British, I'll go, sure. Nigerian, sure. African American, I'd never heard it before, to be honest. It took me about 2 months to figure it out. So at that point, I actually now did join the African American Student Union because I realized I was really I was in that category, whether I knew it or not. I was being addressed as an African American. And I had a much stronger accent at that time, but still, it didn't matter. It all came down to the color of my skin. I had never considered myself black, not because I was in denial of being black, but my formative years were in Nigeria, 99% of us are black. So it made no sense to have this category of black people. We just were people. Our societies were classified based on tribe, based on your socioeconomic status, based on your education status, but never by your skin color. Made no sense. Even when I went back to London, being black was not really a thing. We were considered from where we came from. You were African or you were Caribbean, right? But it wasn't, the first thing was you were black. So there's a lot that I did not know. I was introduced to race when I moved here. So I joined the African American student group at the University of Minnesota, and I was very excited then. I said, you know what? Why don't we plan a trip to Africa? That would be a good project. I was so shocked. People just felt absolutely no way. Why would I go to a place that is full of diseases, hardship, huts, uncivilized? And these were fellow black people. The ignorance was astounding. Likewise, I had that if you want to accomplish something, you can accomplish it if you want to mentality. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I was dismayed by the disparities that existed between the majority white population here and people of color. I felt if you want to overcome it, just overcome it. I was just as ignorant of America's history as the people I encountered were as of being African. So to overcome that, I decided to enroll in a lot of classes about American history, African American studies. I got immersed into getting an understanding of this place that I had chosen to come and study. And now I live. I've been here 23 years, so it's home now. And I began to learn about the oppression, the history, the trauma, and I developed empathy. Not just empathy for that, but I also had empathy for why no one knew anything about Africa. That was really true. The media, the movies, what people choose to share about Africa was so negative. And if that's all that you see, that is all that you are going to know. So how do we increase our inclusivity quotient? Be curious, learn, study, go beyond what is being fed to you and dig deeper. Ask a lot of questions. And then when you ask those questions, you actually want to receive those answers without judgment. It's very important to shed what you think you know so that you can actually learn. That curiosity served me quite well, actually, as I continued on into my career. So I got my first corporate job. Prior to that, I had worked in small, medium-sized creative agencies in account management. And in this, I had to do the corporate job. I just had to. I just felt, I need to know what it's like to work for big companies. So I was so excited. I got that job, and in the first few weeks, I was shadowing my manager and others, how we actually do the work. So on this one instance, I was invited to a review session for a TV spot. The spot, it was a co-op ad, and the spot was for Oreo cookies. So we're sitting there. The presentation was to the director of marketing, and I think the desired outcome for that meeting was a green light, good to go, continue production. So I sat through and saw the concept. It was for Oreo cookies. And imagine a checkerboard, the game checkers, so black whiteboard. And in this board, a white person's hand passed an Oreo to a black person's hand, and the black person passed it back to a white hand. So there was just a lot of great activity and great hype music, and then the call to action and the logo. And at that point, I could see everyone in the room was very pleased with the spot. They were like, yeah, this is really good. The green light was they were getting that green light. And being fairly new to the organization and not really aware yet or indoctrinated into the culture of the organization, which was really, you don't speak if you're not asked to speak, I spoke up. And I went, you're not going to run that spot, are you? There was silence. You could hear a pin drop. My manager gave me this look. And she quickly, oh, no. Yes, it's all okay. And I explained to them that an Oreo in the African American community is a racial slur. It means being white on the inside, black on the outside. It is not a favorable association. So the spot perpetuated that slur. It was innocently done, but it did. And I just thought they're going to have a PR nightmare if they went forward with it. We left the office, and I was reprimanded the entire way from the 33rd floor to the 30th floor. My manager said if I had any comments about anything ever again, that I should run them by her, and she will determine if it's worth going up. By the time we got to our desk, and the director of marketing had done some Google searching. And he immediately said, do not run that spot. Back to the drawing board. A couple of things happened there. One, my manager was signaling very strongly to me that that was not a safe place to have an opposing point of view. I was a minority in the space. I was the only one that had an issue with it. And she was going to make sure I understood the culture, that difference is not welcomed here. On the other hand, the director of marketing was curious enough to check it out. And he sent a very, very strong signal that my voice mattered. So as we think about inclusion in all that we do, are you creating safe spaces for those voices to be heard? That lone voice? That is important to increase our inclusivity quotient. In addition to being curious, we have to create that safety and we have to be receptive and listen. And it doesn't mean that you take absolutely everything that you're told as at face value. It just means you respect and you acknowledge it and you dig deeper for the truth. So upon leaving that corporation, I decided to form an agency. I did start an agency 9 years ago. And in that shop, we were known for creating extraordinary brands. We're very proud of that. That's how we started out. If you know anything about this town, there are a lot of us creating extraordinary brands. Our work was helping our clients find that special thing that differentiated them and made them stand out. It was about them finding their purpose. We hadn't done that for ourselves, though, but we did that for everyone else. So 3 years in, we figured, you know what? There's more to what we do. So at happy hour with the team one day, we had our eureka moment. It was, yeah, we're going to be role models for inclusion. And we're so excited about this. Bought more drinks and figured out we've nailed it. We are going to be role models for inclusion. The next day, reality really started to set in. Like, what in the world does that mean? How are we going to be role models for inclusion? So we now had to address absolutely every single part of our business. And I tell you, the work is never done. We had to look at how we hired. See, in this creative industry, and I say creative using the term for ad and marketing, people typically got hired based on who they knew. I don't think I never applied for a job. Some of you here probably hired me at some point. It was always about who you knew. And that left a lot of people out. If you're not tapped into that network, you won't get a job because the job's never made it to the paper. Or online now, I'm dating myself. So how do we hire? So we decided that we were going to try and build our team with people who typically don't get into our industry. And that is not the easy way to go about it. It really is easier to just call someone that you already know. So we started looking differently. Technical colleges, people who may not have their academic degrees yet, but they have a lot of promise. We looked within the community of people living with disabilities. And then for our leadership team, people that are in those senior positions, we figured people that are well-traveled, they seem to be open-minded enough. And reason being, and well-traveled, it could be well-traveled around America. Even just cross over the state of Minnesota a few times, you'll become open-minded, right? But you have to have gotten out of your own comfort zone. Because you're put in a place where you truly know that you don't have the answers, right? You're curious enough to learn. So we figured that would be a good way to also, recruit who would be on our team so that we can truly be role models for inclusion. We then set out to develop a process. What does that look like with our everyday work? And we came up with a process called Inclusivity marketing. That is where we consider all histories, all perspectives, and motivations into our brand development process. It is a harder way to build brands, but I tell you, it's a more fulfilling way to do so. Our brand development work time doubled when we decided to be inclusive about developing brands. We also had to take a look at who our client is. First, when we were having those drinks and we came up with the idea, we're going, yeah, the whole world's going to be inclusive. Everyone's going to do it. Yeah, right. We soon realized that we needed to focus on those organizations that already value inclusion, but just need some help getting there. Because it is really hard work. There are a lot of sacrifices that need to be made if you are truly going to be inclusive. So you have to really want it. And those are the clients that we have, clients that really want it. So we do have our screeners when we do this work. So in addition to our process, we came up with, okay, what's our check and balance, right? Just because we say we're building inclusive brands does not necessarily mean that we're going to be great at building inclusive brands. So what's that check and balance? And we created our filter, which are the 7 tenets of inclusion. And if you have the handout, they're on there. It's in the pink bar there. But these 7 tenets of inclusion help us make sure that we are still committed to inclusion, but then we also use it to transform our clients' organizations as well. And I tell you, it's really, really rewarding. And I'll give you an example. We recently branded the workforce for the state of Minnesota. And you'll notice if you pass by a workforce center, that's what it used to be called, it will be called Career Force. That was 4 years of work. So I tell you, building inclusive brands takes a lot of time. And why was it 4 years of work? Well, first, the client came to us with their own idea. They really just wanted a marketing plan. They just thought, people don't know about us. We need a better marketing plan. We responded to that request, but we didn't give them a proposal for a marketing plan. We gave them a proposal to gain insights. At that time, we couldn't figure out what they were actually marketing. It wasn't clear, and we didn't win the project. They went with someone else who agreed to give them a marketing plan. A few months down the road, they came back to us and they said, you know what? We want to try what you proposed. I said, okay, let's go at it. We want to use the dollars you had for a marketing plan to travel the state of Minnesota and figure out why nobody knows about your brand. We did that tour 3 times by the time this process was complete. We went to the various locations, talked to people that worked there, and we uncovered so many things. We went to a lot of board meetings. If you know anything about workforce in Minnesota, it's a combination of public sector and nonprofit sector and some private sector entities, a lot of board meetings. And the outcome from all of that learning, which took many, many months of us listening, was that there was no unified goal. Everyone was just doing their own thing. And by so doing and protecting their turf, they weren't really listening to the consumer. They also were not listening to the people who do the work in workforce every day, right? So we came with a strategy, and that strategy, infused great fear into our clients. Our strategy was to build one brand, not the 17 brands that they had, and then work towards a common goal. They understood its importance, and then we set to work now was to get buy-in, and that's when we traveled the state again. And we conducted listening sessions. And through these sessions, being that curious, we gained empathy, but we also had the people within the industry build out what they wanted the brand to look like. At this point, people now felt heard, which was very different from how they had operated before. When we started, we had people, I don't like to think about it, they tell me I make people cry, but because of how scared people were about this change, there was a lot of tension and a lot of emotion. But over time, that got transformed into excitement. People got really excited about the possibilities. By the time the brand launched, we had these same people creating brand videos, having events at their locations, and are champions of the brand. That was an example of having a truly inclusive effort. It took the leadership, all the board directors, to take a step back and let the community, the people that are actually doing the day-to-day work, direct their brand. So to be inclusive, you have to be intentional. And it is a lot of work. It's not a walk in the park, but it's worthwhile work. It makes our world better. And so what's your IQ? What's your inclusivity quotient? And how are you going to increase it? The work of being inclusive never ends. It's a daily commitment. You all have this sheet of paper. I like to think that to become inclusive, it starts with very small steps. And I will give you one assignment here today. Take a look at your network. Make a list of the people that you spend the most time with. Look at your social media feed. How diverse is your social media feed? Right? Make an effort to expand your network. Have the courage to talk to someone that you have not talked to before. And ask questions. And through those questions, listen. And do share your perspective. So if you can list some ideas and then some concrete action steps, because to be inclusive, we have to start with being curious. That is the first step. Thank you so much for having me here today.